Today we're talking about empathy. The card I got for our reading today is Elephant. And elephants are incredibly empathetic, right? We consider them intelligent creatures. They build a community, they form bonds with each other, they care for each other, they remember each other, right? They mourn each other and they look out for one another. They don't really have any natural enemies, unless they're out alone, of course, but their only enemies really are humans, right? So in a way, their empathy, they have the ability to, the privilege. They're so large, and without the prey instinct or the predator instinct, they instead lean more into community building and empathy for each other and loving each other, right? So that is where this energy today is coming from, is this idea of empathy and community building that a lot of us are feeling like we're missing right now, right? That's what a lot of us want. I often think about with things going on right now and the fears that come with those things, you know what I mean? Like thinking like, do these people really think this stuff? And then I'm thinking about my neighbors and, you know, people that I interact with. And there's a lot of distrust and a lot of division right now because we don't know what people think. And I think a reminder is that a lot of people don't know people who are different than themselves. We've been isolated from each other so much. It's like I live next door to people and we smiled at each other a few times, but like, I don't know their names. I don't know what they think, you know? And I think in the long run, it ends up hurting us as a community, especially as we rely so much on the internet for a lot of our social activity and stuff. One thing that I'm going to point out here in this meeting, hello, welcome to the meeting, in this reading is I have a few cards reversed again. Yesterday we had a few cards reversed, but the message in the end ended up being pretty positive. And so today I wouldn't say it's positive. I feel like it would be a little bit more neutral, but just messages that you maybe need to hear. We have the Magician reversed. And so this tells me that what we're dealing with is a lot of people who are being deceptive. They're unwilling to kind of like show the process of what's being done. And these people also lack the skills to actually make something happen. And so they use tools like deception and lying and conning people and, you know, constantly trying to get ahead in that way because they lack the actual skills to move forward. We see it a lot in business practices, right? So the idolization of these poor business practices is kind of attacking our community, right? And it's making it difficult to have empathy for other people whenever people are always thinking like, oh yeah, ripping somebody off is good business, right? That's not good business. It's just forcing someone's hand. So whenever we have a lot of people thinking those are good business practices, we're dealing with a lot of lack of empathy and a lack of community and a lack of people understanding exactly what it is that they're promoting and advocating for, right? We have 3 of Wands reversed. So another issue that's really prevalent in what's going on right now is people don't have a good foundation. And the generations that had been ignoring the younger generation saying, hey, we're not getting paid enough. Hey, everything is going up in price. We cannot afford basic necessities. There was an older generation that wasn't being affected by this because they had profited from what happened before. And so they had a solid foundation. So for them, they were just like, you guys aren't doing the steps that we did in order to get to where we are now, right? But now that their sense of like stability is being threatened, now they're understanding like, wow, we really don't have a foundation. It is so sad to see how many families are selling off property because they just can't afford to have it anymore. But they don't sell it off they don't give it to the next person in the family. They just sell it off to a corporation, right? And by corporation, I also mean real estate. You know what I mean? Like those big conglomerate, whatever. And so it's giving a lot of people a lack of foundation. A lot of people don't have just the basic necessity of stability. They don't have the basic necessity of like being ensured that they have shelter. Even people who are renting right now, it's like, you know, you're a few bad paychecks away from completely losing everything. So when people don't have that foundation, it ends up creating a lack of empathy for others. You know, some people feel like they're working so hard and then they feel like other people are not working as hard as they are. And so it makes them upset to see somebody else have something good happen to them whenever it's like, they don't work as hard as I do. And it is hard to kind of reason with people like that because there are people who are working legitimately difficult and hard jobs and they're still not making as much as they should for how much they put their life on the line. But they think that the status quo is fine because they're still making more than other people. So they're like, it's good for me because I still make more. But it's like, you could make so much more money for what you're doing. If the price of everything went up and your job where your life is on the line every day became something people didn't want to do anymore, they would have to increase the price, right? So it ends up becoming this really difficult thing of like a lack of empathy. People do not feel sorry for each other. People don't want to be there for each other. People are very much like, I want mine, right? So we're dealing with that like at such a large scale right now. And it's really difficult to have empathy for people who do believe those things. I struggle with it too. As soon as this card came out, I was like, I'm struggling with empathy. I'm struggling to understand these people who think differently than me because in a lot of the ways that they think is an absolute danger to me. So it's really difficult for me to open my heart and have empathy. And you're seeing it all over too. People are like, oh, you voted that way, I'm not going to help you out of this crisis. It ends up becoming an eye for an eye, which is completely dissolving the community that we need to survive. The next card I have here is the Moon reversed. So this tells me that a lot of people are waking up to what's going on, and they're being forced to be vulnerable. You're seeing a lot of people kind of regret the decisions they made recently. And a lot of that I think comes from this, like, it's difficult for them to be vulnerable, for sure. You see it. Like, they are like, I feel like this is my fault. I feel like, you see it not only on the news, but also people posting it themselves, that they're like directly being affected, or people in their community are being affected that they didn't think would be. A lot of people looked at this as like one goal. They ignored everything else because it doesn't matter to them, right? And that's a whole separate issue. Removing that issue from it, a lot of people voted with like a particular view in mind, right? They really wanted a better economy. They really wanted things to be better financially for them, and they didn't really think about the fact that the person who was promising all those things was not actually going to do it. And so they're kind of like that, it's like disillusioned. You know what I mean? Like, they're kind of like waking up to this, like, this realization of what happened. Not everybody is. A lot of people are still very much like deeply a slave and deeply protective of the status quo. They want to maintain it. But there are a lot of people who are being forced to be vulnerable in this moment because they're realizing that they lost everything because of a certain viewpoint they had. And then now they're getting to a point where they're realizing they lack a community. They lack people that will support them, especially if they were isolated to only other people who thought the same as them. And then now that they're on the chopping block, those people lack empathy for them. Like, it's just like, it's a really difficult kind of like crossroads that a lot of people are dealing with. I have the new moon here. This card is particularly for this deck, the Wandering Moon Tarot. So it's not in all the other tarot decks, but this is the new moon card. And this basically is telling us to do more shadow work and embrace the shadow sides of ourselves. So for somebody to become vulnerable or be forced into vulnerability, they do need to be a little bit more self-aware, right? And whenever we're self-aware, we do a little bit more shadow work. We have to accept that we have bad qualities. Each of us have like tendencies that are not positive. And a good example of that is people confronting their privileges and confronting their prejudices. You know what I mean? You probably don't realize that you have the wrong idea about something until somebody informs you. And then you have to think back on, why did I think that? And then it can usually come from, a preconceived notion that you created. Someone told you something and you just believed it, whatever it may be. And that's fine to have those experiences. But what you have to do is confront those experiences and be like, oh, that wasn't correct. And so the new moon is telling us to kind of embrace this and to also utilize the isolation we do have to make it more of a hibernation. So utilize it to gain your energy back, to focus on self-growth, self-love, focus on those aspects, and not worry so much about how you can make big impacts right away, right? It's going to be small impacts, little things that will get you there. That's kind of why I started doing these videos again, is because I felt like I had a strong connection to spirit a few years ago, but then I kind of got lost along the way because I just felt like bad things just kept happening around the world. And I just really was like, had absolutely no energy to really like have a relationship with spirit or my ancestors anymore. I just really was focused on surviving. And so now I'm kind of back at a point where I want to share messages with people and I want to talk to people and I want to give us topics that we can talk about and kind of like analyze, So those are like the small things. And it involves me doing shadow work. I pull out the empathy card. Hello, that was right at me. You know what I mean? So it's like, we have to really like call ourselves out and hold ourselves accountable. The last card I have here is the Knight of Wands. And so this card tells me that a lot of us have a lot of passion in what's going on, and it's important to not lose that passion. Also bring some excitement to what you're trying to get done and what you're trying to accomplish. I wrote, bring excitement to the mundane. So I'm assuming that this means, your daily chores, your daily work activities, things like that. Make sure that you are continuing to prioritize those things in a way that's exciting for you, and, make it a game for yourself, or make it like you're part of resistance and being radical. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm going to take this time to do that. I also write books. So that's kind of my thing, is I'm going to continue to write and share my stories and speak in ways that women from the past were not able to. And I'm going to utilize that as long as I possibly can, So try to lean into that a little bit more. So yeah, that is my message for today. It went a little longer than I thought I would, but I had a lot to say. If you liked my video, please like, comment, share. And you can also buy me a cup of coffee. That would be very helpful. All right, later.